So the Euros are finally here, and why not have a crack at predicting them? I mean, they can hardly get much worse than my usual predictions with Kev. So yeah, right, we're cracking on with Group A: Switzerland, Turkey, Wales, and Italy. Pretty solid group overall. I mean, everyone's raving about Group F as a sort of group of death, but I mean, there's some pretty decent competition in Group A. But yeah, I can't look too far past the Italians. I mean, they haven't conceded a goal all year. Roberto Mancini, well, he doesn't have the best Italy team of what I've seen anyway. I mean, they look more than good enough to get away with topping this group here. Um, I have a sneaking suspicion that the Turkish team are probably going to take second. I mean, they face off against each other in the opening tie, but I really don't think that Wales and Switzerland are as strong as Turkey. I mean, they're a team that usually look pretty decent at a tournament. While I like the Welsh team, I don't think they're going to be strong enough. I don't think any of these teams are going to come away pointless in this, but yeah, I'd probably have a sneaking suspicion that the Swiss and then Wales to round out the group. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really competitive group. I'm not sure anyone's going to get 3 wins in it. I think Italy may come away with like 2 wins and a draw, and then Turkey may sneak into second. It's probably going to be a really, really tight group with no hammerings or anything like that. So yeah, I think Italy and Turkey automatically get through out of that group. Moving on to Group B, I think there's like a real chance that like Belgium just steamroller most of these. Um, well, it's probably 3 teams that aren't going to be the most attacking. I think Belgium just have the weaponry to get past this group fairly easy, with probably Russia taking second. Denmark I have probably going third, and the Finns rounding at the bottom of the group. I think this could be a tough tournament for them. While they don't exactly have the strongest side, they're going to be quite compact and probably not going to give much away, but I just don't think they're going to have the firepower to get a result in this. And the other two, fairly interchangeable, but I think Russia are probably a touch stronger than Denmark. Um, okay, moving on to Group C. Not the most exciting of groups on paper. I mean, having seen Austria against England in the warm up games there, you really have to wonder whether they're going to go with that same sort of brute force mentality. I mean, they didn't get steamrolled by England or anything like that, but they were a rough side to watch. Again, looks kind of similar to Group B, where you probably have the Dutch running away with this. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Ukraine might nick second, just because having seen Austria already, I wasn't that impressed by them. But yeah, I'm going to go Austria third, and Macedonia rounding out the group. Again, sort of similar to Finland in Group B. I think they're going to be a tight knit side, but I just don't think they're going to have enough to trouble considerably more talented nations. Alright, so here's where my loyalties lie anyway. Group D, as an England fan, I think they're in for a rough time of this, and I've had this sneaking suspicion the entire time that they're not going to win this group. Even though they've got this like fantastically talented forward line, so many of them are either out of form or just not going to feature enough. But I actually think Croatia are probably going to top the group. I don't know why, but I just have this feeling that England are probably going to draw their opening 2 games against Croatia and Scotland, and then nick a win against the Czech Republic and sort of get through second with like 5 points. Meanwhile, I think Croatia will probably beat both Scotland and the Czech Republic. But yeah, this is sort of how I've had it the entire time: is that England sort of nab second, have a tough draw then, whereas Scotland finish third, but probably don't end up with enough points to get through as a third place team. I mean, I think they'll draw with England, and they'll probably lose to Croatia, and it's always going to be down to that Scotland Czech Republic game about who's going to probably finish third or fourth. And sort of similar to Group A here, I think E is a sort of sleeper group that could be quite difficult. Poland and Sweden, kind of comparable sides, that they're usually really well drilled and have historically had an X Factor striker. Unfortunately for Sweden, they've lost Zlatan for the tournament, whereas Poland have possibly the best striker on the planet in Robert Lewandowski as their focal point up top. I still think you're probably looking at Spain here as clear favourites. But yeah, I think Poland are going to nick second here with Sweden in third. And honestly, I don't know much about this Slovakia team, but I still doubt that they'll trouble the top two sides. And yeah, I think you're looking at Sweden as a possible team to get through in that through the to get through the third place spot. But I think Spain and Poland are pretty clearly the best two teams in that group. Alright, so Group F to round out the group stage, Portugal, France, Germany, and Hungary. I can't look past the French in this group. I mean, their talent depth is just obscene, and you really have to wonder. I mean, if they took another 26-man tournament to this squad of just what they left at home, you'd probably back them to at least get to the semi-finals. It's then a tough call between Germany and Portugal. I mean, so many people here are saying this is a really weak Germany team that's in transition, recalling a lot of older guys that they didn't really want to include because the younger generation of talent isn't quite there. But I still look at them and go, it's Germany at a tournament. They're coming off an absolute shambolic World Cup. But I still think they're better than Portugal. I mean, that Portugal team is solid, but again, they're kind of getting old. But again, they're comfortably going to get through as one of the third place teams. I don't see them, either Germany or Portugal, getting anything off France. And it's then a matter of, do they beat each other? Does it peter out to a draw? Does it come down to goal difference after they both beat Hungary? Probably being a little disrespectful to the Hungarian side here, but I think that France team are so far clear of that group that really it's just those two fighting for third place, for second and third place. Moving down to the third place picks here, 4 go through. I'm gonna lean here. I'm gonna say Portugal get through. I'm gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, scrolling back up, I'm probably gonna go like Sweden, Austria, and Denmark. And they get through. Yeah, I mean, Scotland have that tough tie. I mean, if they can get the draw, which I think they will against England, that it comes in if they can beat the Czech Republic, but even that's it's a tough call. So yeah, I'm going to say that Switzerland and that Scotland miss out just for being in slightly tougher groups with no clear win for them. Which moves us on to the knockout stages, and there's some interesting ties here. I mean, I'm happy enough with the draw anyway. It's right. I'm gonna go just straight down the list anyway, and we'll start off with the Belgium Portugal game, and I think I'm definitely leaning Belgium there. As much as Portugal is the reigning hosts, will have high expectations going into the tournament. They're relying on an increasingly aging Ronaldo. I mean, they have some great players like the João Felix, Bruno Fernandes, Rafael Guerreiro, but you'd expect Belgium to get through there. Just even though I'm not the biggest Robbie Martinez fan at all, I do think that the talent depth is there for Belgium to pretty convincingly get past Portugal. Even though it'll probably be a close enough game, I just think the talent that they have should be enough. And yeah, again, I think pretty cut and dry. I've got the Italians getting past Ukraine there, but Ukraine, I think they're going to be a decent side, but again, it's going to be that thing of they'll beat poor sides, they'll challenge good sides, but the really top tier talent should be enough to beat them. Which is basically the exact same thing here. That I think France pretty clearly get past Denmark. They're going to be well drilled, great goalkeeper. Dolberg, I'm presuming, is going to lead the line for them up top. But yeah, the French here, it's like, look, they're just so far above everybody else that they're going to come up against to this point in the tournament that I really do think that won't be something that will bother them. England, having had them finish second in the group there, they come up against Poland in my draw. Again, I think similar to the last couple, it's sort of a good team against a slightly better team. And Poland, they're usually a tough Poland are usually a tough task in most of these tournaments, but again, I think England's talent depth, having those sort of X-factor players that are going to really set them apart from someone like Poland, who are really going to be reliant on Lewandowski for pretty much the whole way through the tournament as far as they get. I think England get through, and that is a tough draw that I have them coming up against next. Spain-Austria, Yeah, I'm not the most familiar with a lot of the Spanish sides because I don't follow the Spanish game at all. But you have to presume that they're going to be a stronger out than Austria. They yeah, mostly the Austrian team I'm judging against what played England in the pre-tournament warm-up games, but yeah, I really don't see that being the most glamorous of games to watch. It's going to be a Spanish team that are so hell bent on keeping the ball, and an Austria team that are just going to want to kick lumps out of them. But I think that the Spanish will have the technical edge there, and they'll come out on top. Germany Croatia probably would be a fantastic game to watch. Two teams that are probably past their peaks. You know, Croatia from that generation that just really took the European game by storm and got to a World Cup final. But again, another 3 years on, 2 years on, 3 years on, that they're probably past their best. But again, people very very critical of this Germany team going into this tournament. But Germany in tournaments, they're reliable, and I would presume I would back Germany to get past them there. Netherlands, Sweden, I think that's pretty clear. I'd be going I'd be going the Netherlands there. Sweden, they're going to be solid. They're not going to be anything special, but again, I'd back the Dutch here pretty clearly. Which leaves the last round of 16 game as Turkey versus Russia, and I don't know. It's just been something that sort of, having read like the 442 previews and stuff like that, that Turkey have been a team that I've been pretty high on coming into this. I'm quite a fan of a few of their players, especially at Çalhanoğlu. Fantastic playmaking footballer, but yeah, I don't know why, but I think that'll be a really, really tight game, but I'd back the Turks to get through in that. I'll just start off from the bottom here anyway and crack on moving upwards. Say scrolling up just to scroll back down. But yeah, I think as much as I like that Turkey team, I think they'll become fairly undone to someone like the Dutch. It'll be another one of them sort of good runs to the quarterfinals, but not quite good enough against the next bracket up of sides. And yeah, for that reason, I'll go with the Dutch there. I think it'll be a fairly entertaining game, but yeah, that's one I would very much hope to see in the latter rounds of the tournament. Germany, Spain, just because they're Germany, I'd probably say I'd back them to get through against Spain. It's, you know, they get to these areas of a tournament and they just find form at the right time. And while I didn't actually expect for them to get this far in my bracket, it's one of them where I'm like, okay, I haven't seen you progress through anyone I wouldn't expect you to at least compete with. They've avoided most of the big sides that I really, really rate so far, so they sort of snuck their way into my semi-finals. England, France, just I think England will get absolutely decimated by the French. I remember doing an earlier draft of this when I first got the 442 preview, and I think I had them drawing them much, much earlier. So, comparatively, this is a decent run to the quarterfinals for England, but I just think they'll get steamrolled by the French. They'll probably convert back to their back five for this, and they'll just get absolutely pulverised. I don't trust their midfield, and I don't trust their back line. And as much as I'd love England to do well in a tournament, I just don't see them beating the French. Right, so this one took a little bit of debate. Belgium, Italy, the sort of fantastic defensive shape of Italy against mass firepower in the Belgians. But I'm gonna go sort of with the old adage of, like, you know, attack wins games, defense wins tournaments, and just that sort of sneaking suspicion that I think Roberto Mancini will out tactic Robbie Martinez, and that'll bin the Belgians out here. I sort of, I look through that Italian side, and while I don't think they're the most fantastic group of individuals, I think they're probably going to be a really well drilled unit, which we haven't historically seen from this Belgium side. There's all these fantastic individuals of like Lukaku and Hazard and, you know, Alderweireld, but I've never been that impressed with them as a collective in a tournament. And while they could well do that in this tournament, I don't rate Martinez enough as a tactician, and I don't rate them as a collective enough to say that they get past an Italian team that just know how to win in big games. You know, they've got so many senior figures along with some fantastic youth prospects that could light this tournament up, that I would back the Italians to get past the Belgians in a one-off game in a tournament quarter-final. I don't, however, think they're beating the French, who, again, I think are just probably going to batter sides for the most part of this tournament if they're allowed to have that little bit of freedom that they could. Um, while the Italians are probably going to be solid, I presume this will be like a 2-0 win for the French, that they'll just get through it. You know, the Italian side, they're probably going to, especially with the likes of Bonucci, Chiellini, if they are the first choice centre half pairing, sort of tire through the tournament. I know they haven't got the most out of their front pair in Belotti and Immobile, so for the most part here, I think they'll probably scrape a lot of games and be really competitive in most games and get the better of sides that they have this sort of seniority and know how to get past, like with the Belgians in the quarterfinals. I think the French are just going to continuously be able to rotate world class player for world class player. I mean, they just brought Benzema back because why not? Take some of the burden off of Mbappe in the final third. That they're just going to have rotatable weaponry that they're going to be able to easily interchange pieces to keep everybody fresh and keep everyone on their toes, and chop and change enough that I think they'll get through to the final here without really being challenged too much. Alright, other semi final, Germany against the Dutch. Big rivalry game, but it's a really tough one to call because the Dutch are without Van Dijk and the Germans are continuously underrated throughout this whole process. But again, I sort of had them sneak to the semi finals, which is a very German thing to do. But again, I don't think they're going to have enough to get past the Dutch here. I don't really have too much more to say on it. It's just a case of like Germany have sort of quietly made their way through the tournament. Very sort of, okay, yeah, I'll pick the Germans here. Yeah, sure, they can beat them. But it comes up to like the Dutch here, and even though they're losing Van Dijk and they have probably not the strongest squad, it's very much become a weak half of the bracket that it ended up very top heavy. That I think the Dutch will just sort of be able to pick them off with what they have on offer. But yeah, that leaves me up with a France versus Holland final, and I pretty clearly want to go the French here. Um, yeah, I mean, if you just asked me before doing the whole tournament bracket, I'd have probably just clearly gone France, move on. But to actually sort of see them progress through a bracket like this, it's quite interesting to see that again you just end up with the exact same result of the team with the most depth, the most stars, and you know, as a reigning tournament champions in the World Cup, it's like, yeah, France win, what of it?